Thank you for tuning to another episode of the Stop Doing Nothing podcast with Patrick Almond. This is a podcast for high achievers. If you're someone who's wanting to get more productive in your personal life, exercise more, make more money, or just improve your position in life, this is the podcast for you. If you want more information when you're done listening, please visit the website at stopdoingnothing.com. Now, I welcome you to sit back and enjoy episode 17, where we talk with Tim Priebe of TNS Design about how to start and run a business for long-term growth. Tim will cover some of his successes and failures and what you need to know to run a successful business like his in the future. Now, let's get started with the podcast. Hello, listeners of Stop Doing Nothing podcast. My name is Patrick Almond. I'm with you for another exciting podcast episode, and this time we actually have a guest, and I'm pretty excited about this because we don't have too many guests. Most of the time you just get to hear my monotone voice drone on for hours and hours, and you don't get to hear some of the smart people in the world which are doing great things. And right now I am sitting in the TNS web design offices in Edmond, Oklahoma. And TNS is a web design company here in Oklahoma City run by a brilliant guy named Tim Priebe. And Tim Priebe's sitting across the desk from me. Good morning, Tim.
Morning.
And Tim, can you tell people about TNS? Because like we've talked about before, we know each other. We've run in some similar circles, but I don't want to speak for you. I want to know what do you do in this building? You've got 3 or 4 rooms here, a conference room. This place is blanketed with Superman. What does TNS do in the world?
Sure. And just to clarify, for 10 and a half years, we were TNS Web Design.
Okay.
But back in July 2014, we switched to TNS Online Marketing.
My bad. Sorry about that.
But no, and that's, to me anyway, that's very interesting how that happened. But no, I mean, that's what we do, is we help clients market themselves online, represent themselves online. By definition, it turns out that excludes some stuff, at least for us. We don't do a lot of e-commerce.
Okay.
We don't do a lot of make money online type projects.
Darn it.
And
looking forward to that.
But there are some basic things, like when I say we don't do e-commerce, we work with a lot of nonprofits, so donating online, that sort of capability.
Okay.
Paying invoices online makes a lot of sense for our clients. Okay. But when you get into certain things like a full-blown store, an online store, that's outside of the realm of what we do.
Gotcha.
And that's become important for me because I like to say yes to a lot of things.
Right.
To know what to say no to.
Right.
Both in business and personal life. Has been hugely beneficial and something that I've just picked up on in the last couple of years. But yeah, so we have 3 offices here. One is kind of an all-purpose shared area and reserved, has been used at certain points for a writer.
Right.
When we've had an on-staff writer. One is my designer, Holly's office. One is we have a conference room, as you mentioned. And then my wife and I, at least right now, share an office. We work different hours, so I'm here during the day, every day. I say I'm here. I'm running around a lot, and then she typically works when I watch the kids for her. She'll come up to the office and get some work done. Okay. So there's not a lot of overlap in office. We certainly work on things at home together and go to some different meetings together and that sort of thing. But so that's the setup, and so we do a significant amount of meetings. It's rare. Right now, anyway, it's rare for us to go a day without having a client meeting here in the office.
Okay.
Sometimes those take place. Right now, we're in my office. You and I are.
Right.
Sometimes those take place in the conference room, and so it just really depends on the situation. But yeah, that's what we do here. And then I travel a lot for meetings as well. But I do a lot of meetings here, and then Holly will go over to her cave. Where she'll do the design aspects, and I'll come over to my cave where I will coordinate. Although I do a decent amount of work here, I do a significant amount of work at the house as well. So
now, we might have covered it real quick. Can you tell us how long has TNS in some shape, form, or fashion been around?
Yep, so we've been around as TNS, so our LLC is still TNS Web Design.
Okay.
But we've been around for 11 years now. So we actually celebrated our 10-year anniversary last year. had a monthly kind of different giveaways and specials and that sort of thing. And then we had a celebration at the Edmond Fine Arts Institute here. TNS is in Edmond.
Okay.
And so at the Fine Arts Institute, they're kind of a partner of ours, and we've helped them. They've helped us with some different things. But had an open house over there where we actually had an art show for the entire month. And I'm going to forget now which month it was. I want to say it was July. Okay. But we had our open house there and had an art show as well, and so that was pretty fun and exciting.
Now, okay, so 11 years. That means probably 11 years and a day ago you were doing something else.
Yes.
Can talk about that, because I don't know. I have to admit, I don't know about any of your history.
Okay.
Before TNS. What did you do before this? And actually, at the same time, it'd be nice if you could tell us why did you leave that and start TNS?
Okay, sure. So I actually, there's some overlap. I started TNS as a side venture while I was still going to school. Now, I took longer going to college than most people do, or at least people that don't end up with a master's or doctorate. But I was actually a Bible major at Oklahoma Christian University for 3 years. Okay. Took off a year, worked for AOL, back when they had a call center here at Shepherd Mall in Oklahoma City. I wasn't specifically I was planning on going back at some point, but actually my parents said, hey, we'll replace your salary, almost. We'll replace your AOL salary. Right. You just have to get loans or whatever you need to do to go back to school. And I thought, well, I can't beat that deal. And it turns out I couldn't beat that deal because before I even graduated, I think the AOL call center was closed at Shepherd Mall. So is
that the one that had like the big space shuttle down the hallway? Shepherd Mall is more of a business park now, right?
Yes, yeah. Whenever the bombing happened here, a bunch of those government buildings that got shut down moved into Shepherd Mall. Okay. And so, in fact, it was kind of weird when I was there. Just quick side note, but when I was there was still a Foot Locker at one end. Okay. And that was like it. There was no other retail. There was a restaurant, and that made sense to stay there. Right. But there was a Foot Locker at the end, and it's kind of weird. But there are actually a couple restaurants. But yeah, by the time I left, just in the year I was there, their lease or whatever finally expired. Okay. And so they went ahead and shut down or moved or whatever they did. But yeah, it used to be, and I want to say, I could be wrong about this, but I think it was the first enclosed mall in the Oklahoma City Metro. Huh. I don't know if you know this, Penn Square used to be an open mall.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you know how all the ramps are all weird and everything? There's a bunch of ramps and staircases out in the middle of nowhere, it seems like, when you're walking around in Penn Square. Well, it used to be outdoor. It used to actually be an outdoor.
Interesting. I had no idea. And I was just there doing Christmas shopping recently.
Yeah, so anyway, random information. I've lived here so I moved up here to come to college at Oklahoma Christian. Okay. And now I'm 36, so I've just now lived just over half my life here in Oklahoma City. I grew up in Dallas. But okay. Anyway, so I started TNS. I tend to get off track.
Not a problem.
So, you know. But I started TNS while I was still at college. So kind of parallel to that, I went and worked very briefly after I graduated at Advanced Academics, which is an online high school, accredited high school. And I worked there just for a couple months and then left there and went to work at the Oklahoma Bar Association. Okay.
Down on Lincoln, just south of the Capitol?
Yes, yes. And so the Oklahoma Bar, and I don't know how many of your listeners are inside Oklahoma and how many are out, but the Oklahoma Bar, and people living here may not know this, some states have a optional bar. Right. Those tend to be much smaller bar associations because you don't have to join. Right. Well, in Oklahoma, to practice law, you have to be a member of the Oklahoma Bar Association. Okay. And so I actually worked, though, and I'm going a little out of order here. When I went back to school, I was no longer a Bible major. Okay. I was a computer science major, so I thought I wanted to be a programmer. Right. And so when I went to work, so that's what I thought, I could build websites for people, because that was a technical thing. That's originally why I started TNS, was I think I can build websites for anyone. Right. They didn't look pretty.
Mine still don't look pretty.
But I built websites for people. But meanwhile, parallel to that, my full-time job track was in programming. Okay. And so I worked at the Oklahoma Bar Association. I worked on primarily their intranet for lawyers.
Okay.
Which was, I think it was My OK Bar, seems like.
Okay.
And then the actual intranet for staff.
Okay.
And so those are my two jobs, basically. And then the guy that, we were as a 3-person IT department, so I was considered part of IT. And the other guy, the guy that did most of the work on the website, would occasionally, because he knew what I did on the side, he'd occasionally come to me for help. And in fact, when I left there, it was a good relationship. I stayed on good terms with all of them and have occasionally helped them and done some consulting and that sort of thing from a marketing standpoint. But so the marketing thing was completely self-taught.
Right.
And so I didn't go to school for that at all, but learned through the School of Hard Knocks.
So is that how you started building websites also? Was doing something simple like opening up a text editor, type this, what happens kind of thing?
Yeah, now I was not quite nerdy enough to go straight text editor at the beginning. Now I actually do that, so I guess I've gotten nerdier as time has gone on. But
progressed in your training, as Yoda would say.
That's right. So the quick history, and I don't know how many people will care about this, actually started with Netscape Composer.
Okay.
Then I moved to Front Page, heaven forbid.
Yep.
Then I moved to Dreamweaver. And in fact, actually was installing, I found a really cool way, cool if you're a nerd, a really cool way to integrate Dreamweaver templates into WordPress sites. Because at the time we were doing WordPress just for the blogs. It wasn't quite ready to run full websites at the time. But I integrated, so I would update my Dreamweaver template, and the theme for WordPress would automatically update as well.
It's probably back in like WordPress version sub 1 or where
it was crazy. Going back and looking at it, it was barely ready for prime time when we started using it for the full website. But then I switched to WordPress and have used a couple different editors and IDEs since then. I like NetBeans now because what I found is during those late night coding sessions, it was not unusual for me to spend 45 minutes before realizing I'd uploaded a file to the wrong location or something like that. And so now the IDE has kind of an FTP client built in, and so it'll auto-upload the files as I save them. That's how I set it up. So
gotcha. Okay, so you're there doing TNS on the side. At some point in time, you decided that this needed to be more of a full-time thing.
Yep.
I know when I went to start off my business, I can remember at some point in time having fears and the shakes. I can specifically remember laying in Sacramento on one of my very first business trips, somewhat in a paranoia mode, wondering if I could actually run my own business.
Okay.
When you made that decision to leave that and start your own business, did you have any apprehension, have any fear? Did you wonder if it was the right thing? Or did you just not even think about it and just dove in head first?
Right. So a lot of people are wired, ready, aim,
right.
aim, and maybe eventually fire.
Right.
For better or worse, my natural wiring is ready, fire, and that's it. Yeah, I don't even aim afterward.
Gotcha.
And so
lay in bed and think, maybe I should have aimed at some point.
Now, my wife, my lovely wife, Leanne, she is wired the opposite way, where she's the ready, aim. And so once we figured that and some other things out about ourselves, we complement each other very well.
Okay.
When we didn't have those figured out, it was frustrating. But now that we figured some of those things out, so most of the concerns when we went full-time was her.
Okay.
And for a number of years, she did not, in fact, just until a couple years ago, she didn't have a full-time paying job at the same time.
Okay.
And so we actually made a decision a couple of years ago to get out of debt, get TNS out of debt. And so she decided to sacrifice and get full-time employment elsewhere,
right?
Although still doing work for TNS. But so anyway, so that was the biggest apprehension was on her part.
Okay.
And so there would be a point where, and we didn't understand each other as well then, definitely as we do now. And so it was frustrating for her and for me at the time,
right? Because
she was very, no, we need to do this, that. I was getting frustrated. I think when I went full time, I can't remember if Yeah, our second, right, because I went full-time right after when our second born was less than a year old. So we had 2 kids.
Right.
And so I was getting frustrated with not having any time to spend with the kids. Because I would go to my 8 to 5 job. It wasn't 8 to 5. I actually got off at 3 every day and then did TNS stuff.
Right.
But I would work, I think it was 7 to 3 or 7:30 to 3 or some weird schedule like that.
Okay.
But then I would come home and I would go to meetings. And then I would come home and I would have to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't getting to spend any kid time. And so for me, that was so much more painful than the lack of being able to spend the time with the kids that I wanted to.
Right.
That was much more painful than any pain that I had for leaving the job. Now, again, Leanne's perspective was very different.
Right.
But yeah, so for me, that was what the deal was, is just another pain outweighed any potential hesitation.
Interesting. Okay, I didn't know that. That's a great story for people to hear, because there are plenty of people like that who are just a little bit apprehensive for one reason or another. And for you, it sounded like it was mainly family issues and family concerns right there.
Right.
So interesting, because when I started my own business, it was something a little bit different. So that's just really good for people to know. I'm just really interested in the entrepreneur part of why you did this, and what makes somebody make that leap from clocking in and clocking out to not having to clock in and clock out at all. So out of all the things, because you were doing programming at some point in time, like you said, you dabbled in web design. And we think we've covered this briefly. You decided that web design is something that you could do. Did it just seem more attractive than the programming side? Did it allow you to be more creative?
Well, it was more of a necessary thing for the final product.
Okay.
And so, in fact, within a month of going full-time, I had hired a designer.
Smart.
Now, weirdly, I actually hired a programmer on before I went full-time.
Okay.
Because I had a project that I couldn't make it through, and then he was able to help. Now, should I have hired him? Should I have kept him on once I went full-time? Those are different questions. But within about a month of going full-time, it was me, a programmer, and a designer. Now, they were both part-time.
Right.
No, for me, it was always the design was the necessary thing, and I knew that was not my natural talent.
Okay.
Now, I have some appreciation for the artistic, and even within the last year, I've actually got into painting as well. But in general, and if my designer create kind of the digital and graphic assets, I can assemble something good.
Right.
But it's like I know the rules of graphic design. They know when to break the rules of graphic design.
Right.
And so I can teach non-designers how to design. I couldn't teach actual people with the design talent as well as I can teach it. You can't teach that. And I never had that. So that was just, it was a requirement, and we worked with the resources we had, which before I hired a designer was me. And so I would work within my limitations. And for me, at the time, I remember thinking, hey, I know my limitations, and I'm not... And I would see projects where obviously it was a technical person who thought they had design talent and weren't aware of their own limitations.
Right.
Well, certainly in retrospect, I don't know how accurate that was, how accurate my limitations.
Right.
I actually had... But I did my best to work within it and not try to exceed at the time. So with the designer came an increase in prices for our clients also.
Right.
That was one. Once my designers came in, I could tell whether what they were putting together was good or not.
Right.
But that didn't mean I could have created what they were putting together by any means.
And you learned something very smart early on, which probably took me longer in business to learn than you did, is that you can't do everything, and you know where your strengths and your weaknesses are. And I would imagine your design capability is much stronger than mine. That's why my wife handles all the design. And that's just a really big deal to know what your strengths are in businesses and what your weaknesses are.
Well, and what's interesting, I do think that's right. But the next trap people fall into, which is what I'm struggling with right now, is for better or worse, and certainly the natural talent is not of my own. I say a big Christian. I'm a big believer in God, and I think He's the one. But whether you believe in God or not, your natural talents don't come from anything you did. Right. So anyway, for better or worse, just about everything else we do at TNS, aside from the design, I have a natural talent in.
Right.
So now it's no longer a good or not good, it's
Right.
better best choice, right?
Okay.
I have to pick what's the best option for my time and still work on that other stuff that I enjoy,
Right.
but it's not as I don't enjoy it as much, or it's not as good an option. That stuff I have to let go of, and so that's personally the hurdle I'm facing right now. Is I've gotten past the what are you good and bad at,
Right.
And now it's the okay,
Good, better, best.
good, better, best is the dilemma I am currently working on myself.
Okay.
Or at least.
And now I'm curious, getting back to the whole discussion about the entrepreneurship
Yeah.
and what you're good, better, best at. In my business, I've always just worked. There's almost no difference between my home life and my work life. I've always worked a ton of hours. Being an entrepreneur and being that you do work a lot from home, do you have clear set boundaries as to when you start working and you stop working? Do you work long hours? Is because you work a little bit with your wife? Is it all integrated? How do you handle the time management when it comes to being an entrepreneur?
It's a great question. Number one, the default is I'm in the office 9:30 to 6.
Okay.
I may leave a little early sometimes. If I don't have a meeting, I may get in a little late. And of course, in the office, when I say in the office, that may actually mean I'm running around town to meetings. But it's like during that time, my home base is the office, not the house.
Okay.
And so outside of 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, my home base is the house.
Okay.
And so sometimes I will plan on work. I mean, you're talking about binary. There's 3 different combinations of this. Sometimes I'll plan on working and get the work done
Right.
at home. Sometimes I will plan on not working and not get the work done, which that's okay,
Right.
because that's planned family time or whatever the case is, planned relaxation time.
Right.
The frustrating times are when I will plan to work but end up not working at home. Now, here in the office, for whatever reason, that's not an issue.
Right.
But once I get home, there are times still where I will plan on working and not actually end up working for whatever reason. And so that's one of the boundaries that kind of exists, even though it's not 100% effective.
Right.
I also am not one of the laptop literally on your lap in the living room type guys.
Okay.
The reason I have a laptop is not because it sits on your lap, it's because it's easier to carry than a Mac Pro. I guess they're not the big metal towers anymore.
Right.
But for a long time I had a big metal tower and a separate laptop.
Wow.
Yeah, that was interesting. The distinction is just that I can bring the same setup home and work on it there. Actually, home I have an almost identical setup to what you see here, which is my laptop, 2 monitor on each side of the laptop. I have this exact keyboard at home, and then for a while I had this an exact same mouse at home. Now I just cart one of them died, so I just cart it back and forth now.
Got it.
And so, So the physical separation of actually being in the office for me is kind of the boundary. Now, our current home setup, it'll be different when we move, hopefully within the next couple of years.
Okay.
But our current home setup, the kids' computers are in there, and I mean, enough of a computer nerd.
Right.
The 19-month-old does not have his own computer, but the 8-year-old and the 10-year-old each have a computer.
Right.
And then Leanne has hers. So we're all in that space. Now, sometimes I tell them, yes, you can stay in here because I'm going to be using headphones.
Right.
Sometimes I say, no, you need to leave the office so I can get work done.
Right.
And they know that when I tell them to leave, they have to leave.
Got it.
And so that's how our system works at home.
Okay. You were talked earlier about the good, better, best thing. Of the things that you work on, because I know you do some nonprofit work, there's the graphic design work that you review, you do planning, you do social media. Out of all those things, which part of that do you really enjoy when it comes to running? Or is it just the business ownership in general that's the part that's really fun?
So that's what I'm trying to figure out
now.
So some of the different roles that I'm doing right now. Right, there's high-level kind of CEO running the business, coming up with ideas for growth, that sort of thing.
Right.
So I'm certainly doing that. There's sales.
Right.
I'm doing the sales. There is being the expert and consultant. Right. Some of that takes place in the sales. Some of it takes place outside the sales in paid situations. So there's that. hosting management. We provide our clients don't have to use us for hosting, but they can.
Okay.
So I do all the hosting, which basically mostly is emergencies. Actually, Holly, I've trained on the basic setup of accounts and that sort of thing. But when there's weird situations, that's when I'm the guy. The programming aspect of things. So actually converting. We have some low-end websites that Holly does 97% of the work on, and I come in and will help her on something different every time. But then the higher end websites, kind of our mid-level and high end, I do all the programming right now. And then writing.
Okay.
So actually writing blog articles, newsletters, social media scripts for clients. So that's 6 different roles.
Right.
So the problem is I love all of them.
Oh, okay.
Now, I say I love all of them. Certain roles, certain aspects of them I don't love.
Right.
And then, so I'm taking into account 2 things as I look and decide what does it make sense to have someone else do.
Right.
So I say 2 things. Well, a few things. Let's say a few things, and I'll name some of them off real quick. But I'm looking at what percentage of this job do I not enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what percentage do I not enjoy? What percentage is actually taking away from the other things?
Right.
What percentage? So those are the 2 factors about the actual work being done. Right. What do I enjoy, and what's taking away from other things?
Right.
I also look at, I guess, high level. How easy would this be to get someone else to do?
Mm-hmm.
Now, how easy factors in things like how quickly can they get up to speed? How much time do I have to invest training them?
Right.
How much do I have to invest paying them? So multiple factors. Multiple factors play into that. And so, but that's what I'm looking at. Right now, it looks like the next thing, even though I really enjoy it, will be the writing for clients.
Okay.
Because relative to the other roles, it tends to be. It's just going to be less of an investment of time, money, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, right now we've already taken the first step in that a big chunk of our writing is done by freelancers.
Okay.
And you and I were talking about this beforehand. The nice thing about that is I can just get my freelancers to a certain level, and once I'm paying them the equivalent of a salary,
right,
I just pull back in-house and then reset, and then I can continue to grow by having that person manage the freelancers. And in fact, we've done this once before, and our writer ended up getting an offer he couldn't turn down. He was running an IT company also, and his IT company got bought out by a very large, well-known energy company in the area, and so he basically couldn't refuse that offer, which was completely understandable. And I was really happy for him and mad at the same time.
That's happened to me before. I had an assistant that was part-time that got offered something full-time like that, and congratulations, dang it! That's what I feel like saying right there.
So, but probably it looks like that will be the thing that we take care of. That's the thing I'm most comfortable certainly getting someone in because I've done it before.
Okay.
So anyway, but I'm eventually long term. Right now, what I'm thinking is I'll be in the CEO role.
Okay.
I really like the sales role. Now we've also talked about dividing up a sales role for us because there could be kind of a rainmaker, right? Bringing in leads that doesn't have tons of expertise but has some basics, and then there could be the consultative sales role, which that's what I love. That's the part about sales I love. I'm not a fan. I mean, I enjoy going out there and finding people, but not nearly as much as the consultative part. Like, I love that part.
Is that also what you would consider like the closing part?
Yeah, I mean, closing one way or another, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm okay with closing it saying we're not a good fit for someone.
Right.
I actually enjoy those meetings too because they didn't know that coming in. And there's not been a huge number of people, but there's been a couple of people in the last few years that I've said you shouldn't even invest money in online marketing right now because that's not a good idea. You're not going to utilize it. For you, it will be a waste of money.
Right.
And so there's been people that I've said I'm not a good fit for a website.
Right.
Because and I don't think anyone is.
Right.
And so not that there wouldn't be people that would take their money, certainly.
All right.
But anyway, So just knowing when I'm a fit, and I've already forgot the question. I'm sorry.
It's
but
okay.
knowing when I'm a good fit and not. So that's the role I love.
Right.
Is being able to really dig in there and almost the detective. Playing Batman. I'm a huge Superman fan. But
Right.
I have one Batman thing in here.
Yeah, I saw that.
But playing the role of world's greatest detective and being able to really dig in and say, hey. You think you need a website. You self-prescribed before you came in here.
Right.
Actually figuring out, do they really need a website? Do they, and the one that's good for business, right? The one that's not good, abstractly it's good for business to not sell something to someone when they don't need it.
Right.
But the one that's really cool for business that I found, and this goes to why we changed names to TNS Online Marketing versus Web Design,
right.
is when someone comes in and they say, I need a website. After an hour, what we figured out is they don't need maybe a $10,000 website. They need like a $4,000 website and to invest in their social media presence, their blog, their newsletter, whatever combination made sense.
Because there's so much more online nowadays besides just a website.
Right, exactly. It's a challenge to say that putting up a one-time website will be effective at all if you don't do something on an ongoing basis as well.
Right.
But yeah, that's what I love is helping people. That's my personal mission statement is to help people, my family first, then people I know, and then others I don't know.
Gotcha.
And so how I do that is through, one of the ways I do that is through my company, definitely.
Got it. Thank you for listening to episode 17 of the Stop Doing Nothing podcast with Tim Priebe of TNS Design in Oklahoma City. Be sure you check out the next episode, which will feature the second half of our interview with Tim, where he continues dropping his great knowledge on us about how he has grown TNS Design to be the well-recognized and successful company that it is today. Be sure you also visit our website for high achievers at stopdoingnothing.com to check out all of our podcast episodes, all of our blog posts, and get on the email list to get notified about all of our upcoming content. Until next time, take care and continue to be a high achiever.